What up, people? Pusha Ball Black here with Pusha Ball Black Sports. And with the NBA season a month or so away, people are gaining up for the season. Previews are happening and will be happening soon. I'm working on mine now. But before I release my preview, I wanted to respond to actually a couple of things, an article and a fellow YouTuber. And there's no shade here at all. I actually follow him, and he really does a good job. The Legend of Winning, aka L.O.W, he's doing his NBA preview now, and he dropped his first video of 30 yesterday. And how he's doing his video is he's going to go worst to first, and he's going to complete a video on each team. And the first team that he did his video on is the Bulls. Now that, because he's going worst to first, that's the team that he thinks is going to be the worst team in the NBA. So, am I mad here? No. Is he wrong? No. He did kind of troll us at the end by he showed clips of Rose, Butler, and Noah, because he knows this is going to be a bad season. But like I said, this isn't like a diss video or anything. I really like his work. But one of the things that he mentioned, and the second part of this response isn't necessarily with him, but with other YouTubers and a complex article that I read. It was an open letter to the Bulls, and it was about a Bulls fan being frustrated of the Bulls' direction and what they're doing. So, as a Bulls fan and as a person that's from here and has always followed the media here and kind of know a little bit about the culture of the Bulls and Jerry Reinsdorf and all this, I feel it necessary for me to explain their reasoning with how the last few years after Rose, actually after the first the last three-peat and what happened after that, as to why they do what they do. So let's go back for a second. All right, Jordan retires, right? Pippen forces a trade to Houston. He forced that trade to Houston. That wasn't done on purpose. That wasn't done by Krauses or Reinsdorf. He wanted to get out of there. They let Rodman go. I forget if they traded him or they let him go. And they keep Tony Kukoc. They sign Brent Barry. And basically, Jerry Krause's thought process was, we're going to strip this down. And Phil retired too. So we're going to strip this down. We're going to build within the draft. And we're going to save as much money as we can under the salary cap. And we're going to get free agents to come here. They'll come here. It's Chicago. It's the third largest market. We'll be bad for a year or two, maybe. And we'll be back where we are. So, basically, that happened. They ended up finishing in the lottery. They ended up winning the lottery. They got the first pick in the draft that 99 season. They drafted Elton Brand, and they drafted Ron Artest because they had the 15th pick. Now, the first misstep here by Krause is not drafting Steve Francis. Elton Brand was a safe pick. Elton Brand was a stable pick. But they needed scoring. And Ron Artest wasn't known as a scorer, and they really didn't have any other... It wasn't that Brent Barry and Tony Kukoc weren't athletic. It was just they weren't athletic enough. And they could have used Steve Francis as a scorer more so than actually a point guard. But Krause doesn't like smaller guards, especially in the triangle offense, which they ended up trying to run after Phil left. So they go through the 99-2000 season. They finish in the lottery again. But this time in the summer, the plan was, let's go and let's get Grant Hill and let's get Tracy McGrady. So, let's get Tim Duncan. because Tracy McGrady had a good season. He wanted to get out of Toronto, so he was a free agent target for them as well. Krause almost had Tracy McGrady. He was. If you follow some reports, or if you look up some reports at that time period, a lot of people thought he had a legitimate shot at getting Tracy McGrady. A lot of people said they did, which my opinion, Tracy McGrady used Chicago as leverage, just like Eddie Jones did during that time. But he signs with Orlando when Grant Hill signs with Orlando. Tim Duncan wasn't a factor. Tim Duncan signs with San Antonio. You know the history with Tim Duncan. So we get stuck with Ron Mercer and Eddie Robinson. So basically, we get stuck with them. That didn't really go well. That season didn't go well. Ron Mercer put up numbers, but he really wasn't good, and the team was really bad. Same for Eddie Johnson. So this began the dark ages of the Bulls. Tim Floyd got hired and was completely overmatched. And Krause left a few years after this, a few years after Floyd did. So basically, in that little period of Tim Floyd being there, Bill Cartwright had a coaching season. Or a couple coaching seasons, Jerry Krause actually traded Elton Brand, and they got Eddie Curry and Tyson Chandler with the idea of we're going to build the Twin Towers. They were going to build the Twin Towers like San Antonio did. They tried to run the triangle while doing this. It didn't go well, and Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry didn't work out there. So Krause leaves, Paxson gets the gig, and when Paxson gets the gig, Scott Skiles gets hired, and then they move away from the triangle. They get Heinrich, they get Ben Gordon, and then Rose comes. They luck up, and they get Derrick Rose. So now they have a nice little core. Tyson Chandler's there for a season. Tyrese Thomas was there for a season, and he flamed out. You had a nice little core of young Bulls. They made it to the playoffs. They pushed Boston for a couple series in a couple of years, and then when they traded Ben Gordon and they got Tibbs, that's when everything kind of materialized into where the Bulls were relevant again. Rose has his MVP season, and everything is right with the world. The dark ages of the Bulls during the Tim Floyd era, during the Pete Myers era, during the Bill Cartwright era, that scared Reinsdorf. They've always been competitive. Even when Jordan retired, you know what I'm saying? They've always been competitive. They always were able to draw. They were always relative. Even though they never lost any money, they were always relative during the building years, except for those Tim Floyd years. And that scared people, because people, front office, because people stopped showing up. So when it was time to trade Rose, and everybody thought that when Rose got traded, Jimmy was going to get traded, and then we're going to tear everything down. And they didn't. They decided to keep Jimmy Butler, because the deals for Jimmy Butler going to Boston and the deals for Jimmy Butler going to Minnesota were on the table in 2016. They were just scared to pull the trigger. And then D. Wade falls in their lap specifically because him and Pat Riley decided to play a gigantic game of chicken. Pat Riley won, and D. Wade didn't really have any other options but Denver and the Bulls. And the Bulls have always tried to get D. Wade. John Paxson has always had this thing of getting D. Wade to play for the Bulls, because the year he got drafted, D. Wade was on the draft board of the Bulls. It's just Miami got him first, and they had to get Kurt Heinrich. So Paxson has always had this thing of trying to get D-Wade here for years. And when he finally had an opportunity to get him, he got him. The Rondo thing, actually Rondo was going to come first. They were going to, which no one really understood, because Rondo and Jimmy and Wade, you couldn't really run Fred Hoiberg's stuff. And everybody was like, okay, how are y'all going to do this? Because everybody wants to be the ball handler and everybody wants to be the playmaker. Jimmy wanted to be the playmaker when Rose came back, because he had been doing it before. So you got basically 3 guards that handle the ball, and everybody was like, okay, how's this going to go? So they go through this season, or this past season. They go through this past season. They get in the playoffs barely. A lot of people in Chicago were wanting the Bulls to miss the playoffs just so they can tear everything down again, or try to. And they get in the playoffs. And they actually do good in the playoffs because Rondo actually ran some of what Fred was trying to do. And basically, when he gets hurt and Jimmy's proven not to be that dude to take a team to the next level by himself, then they tear it down. Now, that's why they didn't tear it down 2 seasons ago, because they were scared of it being really, really a bad season. Why they decided to tear it down now is 2 reasons. One, it wasn't working as Jimmy Butler being a leader consistently. Jimmy Butler, I like Jimmy Butler, and I actually said when he got traded to Minnesota, I did a video on off-season trades, and when he got the draft video, when I did the video on the draft and talked about him being traded, it actually helps Minnesota because Minnesota has a closer. So it's actually going to help Minnesota out a lot getting Jimmy Butler. And that's more, I'm going to mention that when I actually do my preview. But with the Bulls, you weren't going to, by himself on that team, he wasn't going to get you anywhere but maybe the first or second round of the playoffs. Which for the Bulls, they really weren't studying trying to win a championship because they were comfortable with getting to the playoffs every year. Matter of fact, when beat reporters were asked by sports radio hosts, why don't the Bulls decide to tear everything down? One of the reasons that the beat reporters gave was because they, in the Bulls front office, wanted to continue to make it to the playoffs. When it became apparent that Jimmy Butler was only going to get you to a certain level, basically the first round of the playoffs, and then you're done, that's pretty much it. And at the time going on in the city, the Chicago Cubs just won a championship. Why is this important? Because Jerry Reinsdorf actually owns the White Sox. And seeing what the Cubs did to win the World Series, because the Cubs basically tore down their entire team, minor leagues and major leagues, and it took them about a good 5 years to do so. And finally, last season, everything came together, and they won the World Series. Reinsdorf, seeing this, is in the process of doing this with the White Sox now. And after seeing what Jimmy Butler was capable of doing by himself for being the main option, there was really no reason to keep that team together, because that's your main. No one's going to trade for Dwayne Wade on a 2-year crazy deal, and we're going to let Rondo go anyway. So your best asset, which has always been their best asset, is Jimmy Butler. So after seeing what's going on in baseball and kind of seeing what's happening in baseball with the Cubs and with the Sox, and seeing that the fans would actually show up, and the frustrations that fans in the city were having with mediocre sports, Reinsdorf decides to pull the trigger. Trades Jimmy Butler, lets Rondo go, and they're going to buy out D-Wade. There's no way that D-Wade is going to make it the entire season. If he doesn't get bought out by the start of this season, and they're cutting it really close, they're probably going to wait until the trade deadline and see if they can get anything from him at all. But if I was them, I'd go ahead and buy D-Wade out and start fresh. By doing all this, you've basically given Fred Hoiberg, finally, the keys to the franchise. Zach LaVine has an opportunity to be a star here. Then, if he comes off of an injury, he should be fine. And marketing, Laurie Marketing is a shooter, is a more consistent shooter than Nico Mirotic, and Chris Dunn has an opportunity to be a serviceable guard. He can start. He has an opportunity to be good in this offense, and everybody's young, and everybody can grow together. The reason why Tibbs got let go in the first place is because management and Tibbs didn't get along. There was a lot of issues with Tibbs leaking information to Jeff Van Gundy, because a lot of Bulls issues were being put on whenever there was a national game. A lot of issues were being talked about during, a lot of internal issues were being talked about during the broadcast through Jeff Van Gundy. And they just didn't like each other because of Tibbs' personality. So that's why they let Tibbs go in the first place. They get Hoiberg. I have issues with Fred Hoiberg as a coach. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he was very good at Iowa State. But Iowa State and the Bulls, they've always had a history. Gar Forman's an Iowa State alum, and always had an eye on Fred Hoiberg. So that's there. The Doug Collins situation is not for Fred Hoiberg. The Doug Collins situation is specifically for Gar Forman. Pax is never leaving. I know Legend of Winning mentioned the 5 Gar Pax t-shirts. He was giving one away. Paxson isn't leaving. Paxson also isn't really doing a lot of the personnel moves. Gar Forman is. And a lot of the personnel moves have not been working. So this is an opportunity for, okay, let's get Fred Hoiberg the opportunity to run his stuff, to get a bunch of young players and see what he can do for, I think he still has 2 more seasons left on his contract. Let's see if we can get somebody that still is in the game as an analyst and that Reinsdorf is comfortable with, and see if we can advise him. So I don't think Fred's leaving. I do think Foreman's leaving, just because not only are the personnel deals not working well, but he's getting a reputation around the league and around players in the league of not necessarily being honest. The Jimmy Butler situation was one of the main reasons for this, but there have been other issues with Derrick Rose and Luol Deng over the years. So, and that's attributed to Gar Forman. So if anybody's going to leave, it's going to be Gar Forman. And if anybody's going to come in to coach after Fred Hoiberg, it's not going to be Doug Collins. It may be Chris Collins, who coaches here for Northwestern University here in the city. So I'm just trying to give a little bit of an idea of what they're trying to do and why they do what they do. Because it's confusing for a lot of Bulls fans, to be honest. But if you're not paying attention to the media and kind of what the past is and what they were trying to do back then, you wouldn't understand it. So, anyway, Push a Wild Blackout. Later.